Okay, we are live on Facebook. Welcome everyone. This is the third public participation session for the District of Sechelt budget planning process. So far we've had two lunchtime sessions, one on sewer and one on general operating. So this is an opportunity for members of the public to join in, hear a brief presentation of what's been discussed to date at Committee of the Whole meetings, and then an opportunity for question and answers. So just before I hand it over to Director Douglas for a brief recap, looks like we've got all councillors and senior staff here. However, no members of the public have joined yet. Hopefully they are all watching on YouTube. And I'll pass it over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. I'm just going to share my screen for a few minutes. Okay, so hang on, I just got to adjust my screen. Okay, so I have a short presentation going over the two meetings that we've had so far, budget meetings with Committee of the Whole. We also have had two public meetings, as Carrie Ann was saying a few minutes ago. And this is just a real brief overview of what we've discussed so far. So our topics, discussion topics tonight will be the sewer fund, sewer operating fund, sewer capital, and septage receiving. And a quick review of the general operating fund, which includes the following department areas. At the end, we'll have a brief Q&A on the topics, and we do have scheduled other meetings coming up that we'll inform you guys about. So the sewer operating and capital, just quickly an overview of our sewer collection area within Sechelt. Once again, just looking at what do we own, what do we have to maintain? What is our assets that are important to us? And we have the Dusty Road pretreatment plant, or otherwise known as our septage receiving area. We have the entire sewer collection system, which includes about 50 kilometers of underground sanitary sewer piping systems. We have 9 lift stations, 1 sanitary outfall, and about 1,007 maintenance holes. And of course, we have the Water Resource Center right downtown Sechelt. Some of the things that are needing to be added to the budget this year is included in this list. I had intended going through each one individually, but these are ongoing maintenance items that, you know, as we get to learn our plant more and more, as the plant gets older, you know, these things pop up, and we need to take care of these things. Because if we don't, then we, you know, our ability to keep our plant operating at optimal levels will start to fail, and we do not want that to happen. So for ongoing items, maintenance items that we will need to do, we're looking at just under $250,000. And these are new ongoing costs. Then a shorter list of new one-time costs that, once again, are important to keep the maintenance up in that facility. You know, included in the ongoing costs, and I'm just backing up one, are you know, a couple of part-time people. One would be helping to operate the septage receiving area, and the other one would be utilized at the Water Resource Center. So this is just an overview of the organizational chart. We have asked for a part-time person at the Water Resource Center, and we have vacant what we call a chief operator. It's a class 4 operator. Capital that we're planning for this year includes about just over $2.8 million. Some of these projects have been carried over from the previous year. Some of them are new projects, and some of these are some of these will be funded from borrowing. We have one there that will be financed by MFA, but we're trying to afford our own capital on either user fees or from capital reserves.
Messenger video.
So the revenue, sorry about that. The revenue for the sewer system. Now I've taken and put the revenues and expenses on two different slides. This one is just the sewer operating system, and so this would be anything that's attached to the WRC. And the other slide that we'll see about 4 or 5 slides from now is just on the septage receiving. So for the purposes of discussion, we pulled those two areas apart to show that, you know, taxation or user fees are not funding the septage receiving area. And so once we load all our costs into our budget without touching revenues, we're looking at a $443,000 deficit in this fund. And if we apply a 23% increase and we add it to that, basically that same document, you're looking at a very small $33,000 surplus that, you know, we would move to a capital reserve for the future. The next slide is septage receiving, and so these are the estimated revenues and expenses for that area. And as you can see, there's no surplus and no deficit intended. What we do is we take the difference between the revenues and expenses and we move them into a reserve to cover off some of the bigger items that need to be done up at the septage receiving area, like digging out the solids or dewatering the solids and then disposing of them. So just a quick oversight here as to what a 23% increase would look like to the average user. With your residents, you'd be going from $449 a year to $607. Senior citizen apartment rate would be $304, $304 going to $374. And the commercial rate would go from $1,041 to $1,280. And at this point, the parcel taxes would remain the same at $274. So a little bit of conclusion on the sewer operating fund. The sewer system is underfunded from a revenue perspective. We aren't able to put too much in the way of initial funds away into a reserve. We do have necessary work need to be completed in 2021. And the proposed increase of 23% to sewer fees to pay for necessary work. We're estimating $2.8 million in capital plan for 2021. And we have included requests for the addition of 2 part-time staff in the proposed budget. Carrie Ann, did we want to pause here and see if there's any questions from anybody?
We certainly can. I'm still not seeing any members of the public have joined us on the Zoom meeting, and no questions have come in via text yet either, or email, I should say.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll continue. So we've had one meeting from the general operating fund, the 2021 general operating fund. And that meeting, we covered off various departments and their discussions. We have another meeting this Wednesday where we will be going through the engineering, public works, and the planning and development budgets. So we're starting this year off with, we're not. This budget that you see in front of you here has no additional revenues other than new construction at this point. We try to get a feel of what has changed from a cost perspective from this year over last year. And right now we're sitting at a $732,000 deficit. So what's included here? Oops. So these are the departments that we went over in the first meeting: corporate services, human resources, administration, arts and culture, mayor, council, finance, information technology, non-departmental, economic development, and airport. So what's included so far in the budget? We have professional development. We have last year, a lot of our training that had been planned was done virtually. And so we were able to reduce our overall professional development budget because we didn't have to travel or things were not held in person. And so it reduced the budget last year. And so far, we're seeing definitely anything in the first half of the year will be virtual. Second half of the year, we're not sure yet. And so what we've done is budgeted appropriately for now. And there's about a $13,000 increase included in the budget. We've had increases budgeted for hydro, fortis, and fuel. We have included the chief building official salary and benefits. We budgeted for part of that. We had part of that covered off for this year, and we had to budget the difference. Same with the senior engineer. We had budgeted about half last year, and we had to include in the budget the remaining this year. Last year, we had a vacancy as in the GIS coordinator role, and we reduced the budget for that position by about 6 months. And of course, now we have to bring that back up to full time. And then we've increased wages where we're tied to agreements to do so. Our CMP area for now, we've added $74,000 for one-time costs. The district has asked for an additional member. And so currently we've included $130,000 in the budget. Additionally to that, there are some future liabilities that the district must cover off with the RCMP contract. So we've included $41,000 for that. Now I know we're covering a little bit of the development and engineering departments here, a little bit, but they're going to be giving their presentations on this Wednesday at 3 o'clock. That's when the meeting will start. So come on out and enjoy the discussion on planning and development and engineering and public works. So included also in the budget, we have increased our contingency that was $100,000. We reduced it to $75,000 last year, and we're just bumping that back up. Parks washroom extra cleaning of $22,500. We had just due to our environment right now, we're washing and cleaning some of our facilities a little more than we have in the past. Revenue, we've included revenue of $53,000 for new construction estimation. And increase in 1% utility operating fees. So that would be fees from Hydro, Cable, and Fortis of $3,500. So far at our meetings, really both meetings, we've been having discussions on service level adjustments. We want to continue to meet the expectations of council and the community. We have had the development community has been fairly active over the last year, and it continues this year, and that puts higher demands on staff for development, planning, and engineering departments. The number of grants that we've been awarded, quite substantial. We're talking, about $17 million worth of project work that are tied to grants. And so once again, this puts a higher demand on engineering and finance staff and other departments, frankly, just with whether we're communicating out a project starting or the award of a grant, or recording and reporting back to the province on the spending of those grants. It's extra work for quite a few areas of the hall. And due to the COVID-19, the importance of better and more communication has increased demands on staff as well. And so and the demand for better communication tools, which includes like our website or other tools that we like to use, social media. So as a result of all this, there are several requests in this year's budget for additional staff in several of the departments. So this would be corporate services, just a quick overview of their department and their budget. Not really much of a difference here. It's a little bit of a decrease, $40,000 in contracted services, and I know that's a reduction in our risk management area, and then a bit of an increase in other expenses for $15,000. Human resources, once again, not much of a change overall. We have included in this area just some part-time help that may be able to help us through part of the year, and then just a little bit of increase for professional development that we're trying to do in-house, and very important. And we've had one session, and we're looking forward to some more sessions. So this is just a quick review over the human resources area. They're asking for 2 staff, executive assistant that would be shared with the CAO, and OH&S coordinator, to make sure that we meet the regulations that we must meet with WorkSafe BC. Communications, once again, not really much of a change in service level here. $15,000 increase overall. Arts and culture, just a little bit of shifting within the budget here. You'll see there's a $50,000 decrease in grants, and that was the last year council approved a $50,000 COVID relief grant for the community, and so that is then been taken out for this year. So that's the reduction there. And communications department has asked for a administrative assistant just to help with the added workload in that department. Financial services, overall, no real difference in service level here within the budget. there might be a few extra hours for part-time help on tax time over a previous year. And then the increase in contingency that I talked about earlier, going from 75,000 to 100,000. Finance department has asked for two positions, one a procurement manager or procurement agent would help with efficiencies when purchasing, and especially with regards to all the grants that we've gotten, and a payroll or accounts payable person. We would like to split those positions as they're both becoming more and more busy, and a little more regulation within payroll. And then information technology, once again, we talked about we have to add the 6 months back into the salary and benefits for the one staff member that we reduced last year. And then, a couple of reductions in our contracted services. So overall, the budget here increased a little bit by $34,000. In the information technology area, we've asked for a systems analyst position to help with the ever ongoing changes in the IT world. And, we've been really focusing on our system security, which is hugely important right now. Non-departmental activities, these are really financing items, so increase in debt payments down below here. And the other difference here is an increase to revenue with regards to penalties and interest. With the COVID, last year, we weren't sure what happened with COVID last year is we extended our tax due dates for the second payment in residential and for both payments with commercial classes. And so we anticipated that our penalty interest would go down, so we budgeted less. But overall, it came in a little bit higher than what we anticipated. And so we expect this year to be more like normal. So we've put the budget back at the normal amount, which is showing a $63,000 increase there. And so the district contributes to 4 different areas of economic development in the district area. And so one would be the Sunshine Coast Regional Economic Development Organization to the tune of around $87,000. Visitor information at $50,000. Sunshine Coast Tourism, $12,800. And the Seashell Downtown Business Association, $70,000. Now, although we contribute that amount, the $70,000 is covered off by a local area improvement tax that just the downtown businesses pay that. So it's not a taxing item for the rest of the citizens within the district, just the downtown businesses. And then just a quick look at our airport here. We do have enough revenues coming in from the airport, rentals and fuel sales to cover its operational costs. I wouldn't say it's at a sustainable level yet, but we're working towards that. We have included about $5,000 extra for the clearing the fence line at the back of the airport. We have a lot of growth happening, and if we let it go much longer, it'll start pulling the fence apart, and we don't want it to do that. So we will spend the money this year to clean that up. And this is an invite to our future meetings. So we have on February 24th, committee of the whole presentation, which would be planning development, bylaws, building inspection, engineering, parks and public works, as well as we have a presentation from the Ministry of Transportation at that same meeting. At the March 10th Committee of the Whole, we will have a few groups in to talk to us. RCMP, our library, the Sunshine Coast Tourism. We're planning on presenting a human resources strategy for the asks that you've seen tonight and the ones you'll see on Wednesday. And then we have other, which would likely be the start of reviewing capital and one-time costs again with council or committee of the whole. And so we'll have our requests in that agenda. And then after March 10th, our next meeting will be March 24th, and we'll continue with our one-time costs and capital and projects list with committee of the whole. And we'll also review the reserve balances at that time. And another reminder, we will have a public participation session at March 29th, so the last Monday of the month at 7 p.m. And then just to make sure we're on schedule, we've booked a special committee of the whole meeting, March 31st. And this would just be a continuation of capital and projects and whatever we don't get to at the March 24th meeting. I'm just going to go back 2 slides, 1 slide. And there's a reminder that here that we have a public participation session March 1st at 12 p.m. and a second one, a public participation session March 15th at 12 p.m. So we hit 2 Mondays in a row at noon, and then we hit the last Monday of the month at 7 p.m. And then I think the last public participation session will be April 5th at 12 p.m. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Director Douglas. I believe we can open up the floor to questions. We now have 1 member of the public online with us and a few watching live on YouTube. We have not received any questions via the Zoom chat or email yet, but we will keep an eye on that inbox. Any questions at this time? Or council, if you have any questions, I realize you've had a couple of committee of the whole sessions and plenty of opportunities to ask some questions, but you've also had some time now to do some thinking on all these proposed budget items.
Dave, it's Julie.
Yes.
I wonder if, because I know we don't want to end the meeting early if we don't get any questions. So I can certainly come up with some questions. One of the things that I find that we get asked a lot is around capital budget items. So, you know, when we start announcing these are the projects we want to do, we get a lot of, holy cow, what's that going to cost me? But most of our capital projects are not funded through tax dollars directly. I wonder if you could maybe take a couple of minutes and just explain how a lot of our capital projects are funded.
Sure. There has been a lot of grant opportunities in the last, well, I would say 4 to 6 months. And those grant opportunities will pay for anywhere from 66% of a project to 100% of the project. And so whenever we see opportunity to advance a council priority or a maintenance priority within the district, we apply for grants, and we have been fairly successful. We have $17 million worth of capital that is partially covered by grants, and we're really happy that we're able to get that kind of grants. We still have several grants that we haven't heard an answer on, and I believe that that amount is in the $7 to $9 million range that we have not heard. So, if we're successful on all of them, we're looking at 20, 25, $26 million of projects, of which a lot of them are tied to grants.
Looks like we've got a question via the chat. What is the status of the grant for the Wakefield Road lift station?
Good question. We've been asking the province when they're determining that answer, and although they haven't given us a date, they said that they are reviewing them now for that intake, and so we really hope to hear in the near future. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Just a reminder, the email address for questions is finance@sechelt.ca.
Council, do you have any questions? Councillor Scott?
Director Douglas, going back to the professional development budget. So last year, the approved budget was 30,000. We only used 7, and now we're budgeting 43. Is there special items that you guys have your eyes on as far as that's concerned?
Which budget was that one in?
It was under the general fund under professional development.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go back and take.
Oh, sorry, it's corporate services program, professional development and dues. So the 2020 budget was 36,000. We've only used 7 to date.
Yeah.
And then the draft is 44 for next year. It just.
Yep. So that was, we once again, we just don't know what form they're going to be this year. And so we have budgeted kind of for the ones in the fall to be in person and the ones in the spring to be virtual. So before we finish the whole budget process, we will have a look at that complete list again and just make sure that we have, nailed it down that way. So if there's a lift there, it would be because we planned to be in person at some of the events in the fall.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, one of the positions for the sewer fund was a operator for the Dusty Road site. Is that coming out of the general sewer fund, or is it coming out of our septic fee fund?
That would come out of the septic fees.
Perfect. I'm not sure if that was reflected on this slide, but I'll have to go look back and check out the notes.
Yeah, it's reflected there, and
Perfect.
what it does is it reduces the transfer to the reserve. So yeah, so if we don't, that one. Yeah, so what that would do is just reduce the amount of the transfer to the reserve if we go for that.
Okay. That might be a discussion at future meetings if we want to take that approach, or we want to increase the septic fee to fund that, because those reserves are important.
There's one question in the chat from our attendee. It says, if the Wakefield Road grant is not approved for funding, does the district plan to undertake the improvements on its own? And would that be considered for 2021?
Yes. We talked about it last year that if we if the funds are not approved, that we will have to borrow our portion of the funds for that project. What that will do is right now in the capital budget, we're showing it as being funded from grants and from DCCs and a little bit from taxation. So if we are rejected, we would come back to council and change that funding from grants to borrowing and DCC and a little bit of taxation.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Mayor Seegers. I missed that one. We have received one question via email. It is a long one. It touches on many different topics that are of concern to our citizens, I believe. I'm going to summarize it as best I can, and we'll provide a more fulsome response to this person via email, and we can also post the responses on our For the Record page as well. It's mainly discussing the shifting priorities and our growth in our community and whether that's sustainable. It touches on affordable housing, ability to access water, and just the ability for citizens to keep up with payments these days with the cost of living on the Sunshine Coast. The proposal is for the finance group to provide a realistic budget that aligns with the inflation rate, maybe a 5-year rolling average. Borrowing should be limited to those extraordinary items related to fundamental infrastructure only after the wants are and nice to haves are removed from the budget. Would you be able to speak to some of those ideas in general, Director Douglas?
I mean, in general, I don't think there's many like nice to haves in this budget. We certainly there is certainly a cost increase in this budget, and the asks of people or of staff looking for more staff is just a reflection of the local economy being fairly active right now. And you know, I think it's important to support, you know, the economy in general in the district area, and so you know, we have to be just cognizant of keeping, you know, the economy vibrant really at this time, and this is it is a tough time right now for a lot of people, and council does you know understand that and does know that, you know, any increase to taxation could be a hardship on people, and but it's about the whole community, it's about the bigger picture, and we have to cover some costs that, you know, maybe have been neglected over the years by either previous councils or staff not, you know, looking to do them at that time. But, you know, we're getting to a point where we need to take care of some of our assets.
Absolutely. Recognizing that many families and individuals are still feeling the hardship of COVID, as even though we are starting to reopen and working towards vaccines and everything, I'm just curious if any of the COVID funding relief funds would be appropriate for some sort of hardship compensation for a situation where somebody is having trouble keeping up with their municipal taxes. That's my question. That's not a part of this question.
Yeah, I don't think that we receive the COVID relief funds or reopening funds for specific reasons or specific purposes, and so we must spend them in that way. If we don't spend them as to the restrictions on funds, then we would have to pay that back at some point, because we do have to report in about a year's time what money we did spend and what it was spent on, and then it'll be evaluated by the provincial government, and that would right now, that is not one of the allowable expenditures.
But by helping to reduce our overall operating expenses related to the new COVID factors that we're addressing, that's how we will be able to use that.
Absolutely.
I'd like to address the overall regional development piece, or regional growth piece. I would say 2 years ago now, when the governments had an intergovernmental meeting in person, we talked about regional growth strategy. So all the governments on the Sunshine Coast want to get together to look at how do we anticipate growth will happen in the region, because that has impacts on roads, on sewer, on water, etc. The regional district actually has some money put in the budget this year at that level, because they are the regional government responsible for a lot of that. And they are looking then to move that process forward, so that we'll come together, our staff will come together to do some of that planning, because we need to have that bigger picture, so that the community and anybody coming here from outside the community knows where we're targeting development, and then how we're going to actually support that moving forward.
If I can, could I just jump in with another response about the tax increase question?
Please.
I think what we're trying to do is address some not underpaying attention to our infrastructure. For a long time, haven't been keeping up on our infrastructure deficit. We built all of our roads in the 60s, 70s, 80s. They're starting to crumble. Same thing with our pipes and our other infrastructure. But so there's a need there for our engineering department to get bulked up. There's a need from our wastewater system. Our operators are way over capacity, and they're struggling to keep up with that basic maintenance. And we're starting to see those fees, all those costs pile up this year, because we're starting to get a grasp, but the staff just can't keep up. It's the same thing with planning. Development is so busy, we can't take care of some of the basic planning tasks. Finance needs more support, because we are doing so many projects to try and keep up with this infrastructure. We could continue to ignore all of these needs, but that is not in the best interest of the District of Sechelt. I think our job is to ensure that our services continue and they don't fail. I think that's what we are at risk if we start ignoring some of this infrastructure deficit and some of these planning activities and this staff support for all of that. Our infrastructure will start failing, and the basic service of maintaining a functioning town will come into doubt in 10, 20 years. So we're starting to address that now.
A good example of that is our last council meeting. Anybody who wants to see that, go and look at the videos of the maintenance holes and the state of them on Trail Avenue. And I think, Carrie Ann, there's another question in the chat.
Yes, thank you. I just saw that. It's back to the Wakefield lift station. If the district did have to borrow money for that project, would it require an alternative approval process?
The plan was, when we talked about it prior, was to borrow those funds in a 5-year period. And so that's what I would bring to council. And so if we were to borrow for 5 years, there would be no alternative approval process. If council didn't agree and wanted to borrow for 10 years or longer, or 5 years, more than 5 years, but 10 years, then we would have to go through an alternative approval process.
Thank you.
Station is somewhere in the neighborhood of, well, it's under $1 million. Do you remember what the cost of that loan would possibly be?
We were looking to borrow, I believe, 670,000 for that one.
That sounds right.
So I believe that one is partly covered by development cost charges. Just hang on, I have to say. Yeah, so that one is partially covered by development cost charges. And currently, the budget split is based on what the grant amount was that we could get, so the coverage from the grant. And so I believe that DCCs or development cost charges could probably pay for a greater portion of that project. And so our borrowing would be, I would say, anywhere between 500,000 and 640.
Thank you. We haven't received any other questions via email as of yet, and I'm not seeing anything new in the chat.
Perhaps an explanation of the COVID relief funds. It's my understanding that the COVID relief funds, their intention is to assist municipalities with expenses that they're incurring as a result of the pandemic, but also to stimulate the economy. What does that mean? Does that mean we could use the money for the Wakefield lift station because it broke during a pandemic?
You come up with some really different questions.
I'm trying to be a hard-hitting citizen.
Yeah.
Thank you for your question, hard-hitting citizen. The COVID reopening grant is fairly specific. Although it has a range of expense items, they have to be relative or relate back to COVID-19 related costs. So if an asset has broken during COVID time, that does not necessarily mean it can be covered by these funds. But to bring our staff back to work at Municipal Hall or district offices, if we have to add infrastructure within the building to allow more safe working environments, we can utilize those funds for that. The other thing that we can use the money for is we have many people working from home currently, and our infrastructure, meaning our computers that we have available, doesn't match or meet, in some cases, the level of technology that we need to have for people working at home. So that's another stream that we can spend the funds on, would be for technology. Another one that we're looking at is upgrading our infrastructure within our council chambers to improve the ability to host meetings away from the office, but have the sound system appropriate so that people could be in the hall and have a good experience at a council meeting from a visual and from an audio perspective.
Thank you. No new questions via email. Oh, we've got one coming up on the chat here. Was a location identified for the potential SemiDev Station? If so, where, and have you heard whether you will be receiving tourism community recovery funding to do this project?
So a really good question. We applied for a grant for the for a receiving station for for dumping. We have not picked a location yet, and we have not heard yet from the grant opportunity. So we are hoping that we'll hear something within 2 months on that one, and that's a sizable grant as well. That's $1 million grant that has, I think, at least 6 components to the grant, which includes a dumping station.
Let me further questions from council or anyone else on the line with us today? Or we've had no further questions in our email as of this time.
Care if I can share my screen for a moment. So this is a spreadsheet that I put together, and it has it's divided into 3 sections. And the top section is grants that we've applied for that we haven't received any word on yet. And so there's one that we put out recently for $3.3 million, and that includes improvements for trails, improvements for drainage, improvements for bike lanes, and around different areas of town. And like I said, that one just went in, I believe it was late January. So we don't anticipate hearing from this one for a little bit. The tourism.
To interrupt, Dave, would it be possible for you to expand or to zoom in on your screen a little bit at the bottom of your Excel screen there? The font is just a little bit small on the share.
Thank you for that. Is that bigger?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
All right. This is the grant that the person was asking about, the tourism dependent communities. It's $1 million grant, and it also is made up of the sanitary dump station, Trail Bay Seawalk, wayfinding signs, Hackett Park improvements, and welcome sign lighting. And once again, that one went in late last year, and so we could hear from that one probably in the next 2 or 3 months as well. The Wakefield lift station has not been awarded yet. That one's been out about a year, and we've heard they're assessing that grant now. This grant here, we had word today that we received this grant, and this was to improve the Rockwood Lodge, some of the necessary improvements and refurbishments that are needed there. Northern and Rural Communities Grant. This was applied for, I think, back in November. It's a $3.8 million grant. It's really it's phase 2 of Trail Avenue. We have not heard about this anything on this one either. This is a short turnaround grant, and you know they want to, if they award this, they want to see people in the ground almost immediately. And you know, I think we felt lucky we had a shovel-ready project in this regard, so we can get going on it soon. And then BC a new spaces grant, daycare grant, applied for back, I think that was October, November, for $2.7 million. And then Boulevard redesign, investing in Canada infrastructure grant for $600,000. And so the grants that we have not heard on, other than the one which you got today, total $12.6 million. That's what we haven't heard. The next section here is grants that we have been fairly recently awarded. Really, I have moved the Rockwood Lodge one down, so I'll take it out from above. The Wharf Street at Cowrie, that was awarded kind of October, November last year. The COVID grant we talked about at $2.5 million. A couple small grants. There's 3 small grants, 15,000, 15, and 40. Bike lanes up Reef Road, Shoal, airport grants, improvements that we've been working on diligently, and Hackett Park band shell. So all those grants that have been awarded, $7.6 million, and then grants previously approved to us, $11.8 million. So big money, big grants happening, and we'll see some really nice improvements to the district here in the upcoming year and a half.
Looks like we'll have our work cut out for us if all those come through.
We will, for sure. Even if they don't all come through, sure, we have a lot of work.
That's true. Looks like we have no further questions on the chat. Nothing else has come through on email. Were there any other questions in the Zoom meeting? Just looking to see if there's any hands up.
Our Director of Engineering just unmuted himself and showed up, so he might have something to say.
No, I just wanted to say hi and make a plug to anybody who's out there and listening to tune in on Wednesday for a comprehensive presentation about all the things that the Engineering and Operations Department is working on. And I think when you see the priorities that we're going to be actioning on in the next year, there'll be some recognition that a few extra staff members are probably warranted. So just a reminder to everybody.
And following that committee of the whole session on Wednesday, the 24th, we will be having a noon public participation Zoom on March 1st for anybody who prefers the lunchtime schedule to ask questions. We're also always open to questions via email. You can jump in on our Facebook page, and there's always, you can pick up the phone, 604-885-1986, and just let our customer service representatives know you have questions on the budget, and they will route you through to the appropriate person. Any final words, Mayor Seegers?
I think I'd like to let the community know that all of these priorities and things that staff are bringing forward now, these haven't been approved. So this is bringing forward, and we've asked staff to bring forward the asks for now and into the future, because we recognize that we need to plan for the future. So we're bringing these to the public. We hope you comment. We hope you let us know what you like, what you don't like, because we're going to take all that information under advisement when we do our deliberations. So we're still bringing forward more new information. And as you can see, all of council is here because we hear it a few times. We're also looking to see, what we're in support of or not. So I look forward to further presentations, and again, welcome any comments from the community. If they email to council@cshelt.ca, it comes to all of council. Thank you.
Great, thanks everyone. And with that, we will sign off for this evening. Thank you everyone for attending.